Go ahead and give us the title already. The Indiana Hoosiers have become the portal champions this spring.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. Appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. Happy Monday, start of a new week. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers, those of you that are coming back each and every day, truly making this your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Look, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. The Indiana Hoosiers and Mike Woodson, we've done it again. We went and got another portal commit from over the weekend. It's a guy we've talked a lot about. It's somebody we were hoping would come to Bloomington, and his name is Kanaan Carlyle. Yes, another guard from the Pac-12 has committed to be an Indiana Hoosier. And look, I'm just going to say it. We're portal champs. We have become the number one ranked class in the transfer portal in this offseason. And I told you weeks ago, I said Mike Woodson's job relies on his transfer portal success. Well, guess what? Here we are. He's gone out and gotten 3 of the top 20 players in the transfer portal, and Oumar Ballo, Kanaan Carlyle, and Myles Rice. And Kanaan Carlyle is the newest member of this class. He is the guard from Stanford who averaged over 11 points per game last season as a freshman in the Pac-12. Had 11 points a game. Okay, 6'3", 185 pounds. He's considered a combo guard. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But you bring him in along with all the other guys you've gotten in the portal, plus Bryson Tucker, plus the guys you have coming back. Oh my goodness, does the potential of this roster continue to grow day by day. As a freshman, he averaged over 11 points a game, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, shot 38%, almost 39% from the field, just 32% from 3. I know that's something we're kind of a little concerned about, especially with him and Myles Rice, but we'll talk about that as well, and shot almost 78% from the free throw line. So he was an honorable mention in the Pac-12 all-freshman team. This guy can play. He can really, really play. And here's what's exciting about this too. He has those 3 years of eligibility. So if you bring him in and treat him right and do what he wants you to do, and he does what you want him to do, he could be here for a while, which is really, really exciting to me. And that's something that has not been the trend so far with the portal additions, where you're bringing in 1 year. A lot of people call them those 1 year rentals, right? Which is kind of what they are. But Kanaan Carlyle's not that way. He could be here for many, many years unless he, gets really good and decides to go pro and all of that. But the potential is he could be here for the next 2 or 3 years. You bring him in along with Myles Rice, who will be your starting point guard, along with Oumar Ballo, who will be your starting center, and that's a really good haul. And guess what? I don't think we're done. I know we're not done. I think we're going to keep bringing in guys. We're still having them on visits. We got a guy to talk about later today that is here and was here this weekend. And we've still got 3 spots to fill on this roster. But talking more about Kanaan Carlyle, yes, he's a combo guard. And yes, he did play some point guard for Stanford at times. But I think you bring him in here to be your 2. You bring him in to be your shooting guard because it was Myles Rice always to be your point guard now that he comes in through the portal because, let's be real, there's just no real confidence there behind him, which, yes, is a problem. But again, more on that later. You bring in Myles Rice to be your 1 because of what he did at Washington State, because of how skilled he is at the point guard spot, averaging over 14 points a game. Kanaan Carlyle, on the other hand, is going to be your shooting guard. And the question then becomes, do you start him or do you start Trey Galloway? a Trey Galloway who's been in Bloomington for a long, long time, who decided to come back for one more season? Or do you bring in Kanaan Carlyle, who has 2 or 3 years of eligibility, and you let him start and the senior come off the bench? Or, and I think this could be what we see this offseason, do you have a battle for that starting spot at the 2? I think that's really intriguing, don't you? I think you could see a true shooting guard battle, which I don't know how many times that happens in college basketball, but you have that opportunity here. Some of you I've seen had said, no way you can put Trey Galloway on the bench. Look what he's done for Indiana. Look what he's done for the Hoosiers. Some of you have said, well, he's going to have to contribute a little bit more if he wants to be that starting spot. How could you bring in Kanaan Carlyle and not start him at the 2? I think both of you could be right. I really, really do. I think both parties have some interesting arguments. My opinion right now, I think you start Kanaan Carlyle, because I'm in the camp of you don't bring him in if you don't plan on starting him. And that's probably what the Hoosiers sold him on was, hey, come be our starting shooting guard. I love Trey Galloway. I do. But here's how I feel about it. You've had your shots. You've had your chances. It's time for the new fresh meat to come in and take this program to the next level. You've done great, and we appreciate your service. And we're going to need you at times, and we're going to call on you for your senior leadership. But it's time for the new era of Indiana basketball, and that is Myles Rice at the 1 and Kanaan Carlyle at the 2. I'll say this, though. I will say this. With Carlyle having point guard experience, he's really good with the ball in his hands. He's really good off the dribble, can get to the rim. His shot is good when he's on. But that allows Mike Woodson and this staff to really rely on him if Myles Rice is not on the floor, and he is for whatever reason. Whatever the rotations end up being, we have to wait and see what that's going to be. But you trust Kanaan Carlyle with the ball in his hands to run the point if he has to. If he has to do that, he can. He can push the ball off of rebounds. He's always looking for the open man, and he is looking to push along with Rice. So I think that's exciting. That transition game that I begged us to do last year, and we wouldn't do it because we didn't have the ability. You trust him with the ball in his hands. So if he does have to play a little point guard, he can, but he is going to be your starting shooting guard. And man, this is becoming one of the best rosters in the Big Ten, if not the best roster right now. There is a little bit of a depth issue. I'll give you that. But I think the Hoosiers are working on that. But as of right now, as we speak on Monday, April 22nd, this is the number 1 ranked transfer portal recruiting class in the country. Mike Woodson knew what he had to do. This coaching staff knew what they had to do. They had a big part of both of these guys showing up, Rice and Carlyle. They understood that their jobs were on the line here. They were at stake if they didn't go and be active in the transfer portal. It's the number 1 ranked class in the country. I want to talk about that some more after this here on today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Look, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, and look, you might not have time or the resources to go out and hire those new folks. Let LinkedIn Jobs help you and take off that stress. Over 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day, your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Look, if you're here and you like the content, be sure you like the video on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel if you have not. as of this morning, we're just 3 away. Yes, just 3 subscribers away from 2,300. So if you're not a part of this crazy family over here, come on and be a part of it, man. Nobody's working harder than we are. Nobody's having more fun than we are, okay? So be sure you do that. For all of my audio listeners, I love you so much. Be sure you follow on whatever platform you're on, and be sure you hit the notifications so you never miss a new episode of Locked On Hoosiers. My everydayers, you are the reason that we do this each and every day. This Indiana transfer portal class, I told you before, it's the number 1 ranked class in the country. And yeah, you tend to get there when you recruit and get commitments from the number 1 overall player, the number 10 overall player, and the number 18 overall player in the transfer portal class. And I know this is it's a sort of a new term that we're having to come up with and be familiar with transfer portal rankings and transfer portal class rankings. It's something we've heard about for decades in high school recruiting, right? It's your high school recruiting rankings based off of the stars and based off the numbers and all that type of stuff. The transfer portal is the same way. It's the exact same way, except this is more on rankings on what the professionals think based off of who's entered the portal and what their potential is and all that type of stuff. Now, it is somewhat based off of numbers, and they do look at what their recruiting rankings were and then what their actual performance numbers were, which you can make an argument that this means a little bit more than what it did or what it does for high school, because this is at least ranking these guys based off of what they've done in college basketball, not what they've done off of high school basketball. And I know these are two completely different things, but you get what I'm saying here. The Hoosiers, after last season, we knew we were losing a couple of guys to graduation, NBA draft, whatever. And there were a couple of guys we didn't know what their status was that have decided to come back. There were some big names that were out there, Malik Renew, Mackenzie Mbako, that we really had no idea and could have left, could have stayed, could have done whatever they wanted to, and they decided to come back. So all those things were fine. But we understood that we had 6 or 7 roster spots that we had to go and fill. And we understood that you couldn't just go out and fill them with anybody, fresh body that wanted to come here. You had to go get some players if you were Mike Woodson and this coaching staff. And I'll be honest, I was worried. I was very, very concerned because I just didn't know what was going to be out there. That's a big question right now with the transfer portal is who's going to enter, who's going to leave. You just don't fully know what's going to happen. Then you have coaching changes and then everybody dips out of town, aka Kentucky, right? In Arkansas, you just have so many unknowns when the portal opens. And then my biggest concern was, what's our selling point? What does Mike Woodson and this staff walk into the living room and sell to players coming off of last season? Because it wasn't good, right? I mean, we can all agree on that. It was not good. So what were we going to sell them on the future for them and the future for Indiana basketball? Especially with how everybody sort of reacted when Mike Woodson was brought back as the new head, or as not the new head coach, but retained his job as the head coach. Well, I think we're selling them on a bright future. I think we're selling them on playing time, and I think we're selling them on trying to put these guys in the NBA. And whatever we're selling, it must be working. Number 1, number 10, number 18, Oumar Ballo, Kanaan Carlyle, and Myles Rice. That's a heck of a haul, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you get to become the number 1 ranked transfer portal class in the country. You're the champs right now of the portal, which that only takes you so far. That's an off-season accolade. There's no doubt about it. But you can't deny, and everybody's taking notice right now, that the Indiana Hoosiers are crushing it in the transfer portal. Coming up this week, make sure you tune in for this. We'll have Andy Patton from Locked On College Basketball join us to kind of give us an outside perspective on what the entire country is saying right now about us here in Bloomington, because I promise you, they're taking notice. Yes, they are. Because how could you not? How could you not notice what the heck is going on over here? Especially because everybody, and I mean everybody, noticed when Indiana was not having a good season. Everybody let us know. They all wanted to point their fingers and poke fun, which is fine because that's what happens when you're a big name brand like Indiana. But I promise you there's some people worried right now. And the Big Ten should be worried. The Big Ten should be taking notice. Oh, crap. Here comes Indiana once again. Now, they're all asking the same questions we'll be asking. How are they going to blend? How are they going to mesh? How can the coaching staff coach them up and make them a good team? How can they make some of these guys a little bit better? Because as good as these guys are, Ballo, Rice, Carlyle, whoever, they still need to get better because the old saying goes, I say old, it's a newer saying, but it's a very popular one. Myself, I use it all the time. These guys were in the portal for a reason. And I think you have to keep that in mind here. As much fun as it is talking about these guys and how much they can bring to this squad, you do have to remember they were in the portal for a reason. And every player has a different reason. They do. Every single one of them has a different reason. And some of that we know and some of that we don't. Part of it we know and probably part of it we don't. So while they're great and they're awesome and their rankings are very high, and yeah, the three guys you're bringing in are better than what you had last year. You've still got to work on them. You're not bringing in the next LeBron James and just saying, oh, here we go. You're going to help win us a championship. It's not like that. You're bringing in players that are very good, that need a little bit more help and can make you a title contender in the Big Ten regular season and tournament, and then help you make a run in the NCAA tournament. But you bring in Oumar Ballo, who is going to be one of, if not the best center in the Big Ten, and you literally just brought in 2 starting guards through the transfer portal. That's unheard of, man. That's unheard of. And the fact that we got both guys that I think we wanted, I think that's a big part of this too, is the Hoosiers have gone after a lot of names, but when they have dwindled it down to guys that they wanted, they got them. And not every school can say that. I'm just telling you right now, some big name programs cannot say that about who they've wanted and who they've gotten. And Indiana can. Yes, there have been other names in there that we have missed out on. There's no doubt about it. There's a couple of names that I was really wanting to come here that decided to go elsewhere, and that's fine. But the ones that we wanted here, all the 3 guys that have come, we wanted them and we got them. And I'm happy with what we got. I think we have a phenomenal portal class on top of Bryson Tucker coming in through the high school ranks. Plus, you bring back Malik Renew, Mackenzie Mbako, and Trey Galloway. You have a starting 5. You have your starting 5 plus at least one guy coming off the bench. And I think that's where the Hoosiers head next. I think that's where we have to go is, okay, you've got 3 spots remaining. Go and fill your bench with guys that you can trust when you need them. Because I've told you this, and I don't have to tell you this. We didn't have that last year. We didn't have a bench that we could play and actually do something with a year ago. I think that's what's coming up next. And that's why I say we're not done yet in the transfer portal. We'll talk about who's on campus, who's coming up, other names to know in the transfer portal for the Indiana Hoosiers. We'll talk about that after this on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and hey, opening weekend was fantastic, wasn't it? NBA games were kind of a little bit of blowouts. NHL, fantastic, but all the games were a lot of fun. Plus, baseball season is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment here on the show. Appreciate you being here. Again, make sure you like the video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you're on the audio version, you can follow us on there, hit the bell notification so you never miss a new episode of Locked On Hoosiers, and you can become an everydayer like so many others. I keep saying we're not done in the portal because we're the portal champs and we're never done. We're always hungry. We're always wanting more, and I think that's what we're doing right now. The Hoosiers are going after a guy that Hoosier fans should be very familiar with. You may have to remind yourself of who this guy is, but you hear the name and you're like, wait a minute, why does that name sound familiar? Why does Zach Anderson sound familiar? You got to go all the way back to the very beginning of the year in game number 1 of the 23-24 season for the Indiana Hoosiers, when Mike Woodson and his team, they hosted the Eagles of Florida Gulf Coast inside of Assembly Hall. And we were getting the year started. We were excited. We were hyped up. It's like, all right, here we go, man. Game 1, you got a mid-major coming in. Yeah, they've made the tournament a couple times, but we're not worried about that. Let's get off to a great start. And it was stressful for 40 minutes. 2-point game at the half. You end up winning by 6, and you had to have a dogfight for 40 minutes in the first game of the season. That should have been telling and really should have told us what was going to happen. But, hey, it was the first game of the season. What do we know? But the reason that Florida Gulf Coast was in that game was because they had a guy just go off for 19 points to lead all scorers for Florida Gulf Coast and to lead all scorers in the game. They had a guy go for 19 and Zach Anderson. They also had a guy go off for 17. But Anderson, if you remember, with those 19 points, went 7 of 13 from the floor, 5 of 7 from downtown. We're going to get to that in a second. Had 7 total rebounds, a couple of steals as well. And he almost single-handedly beat the Hoosiers inside of Assembly Hall. Well, he's in the transfer portal, and Indiana's so familiar with him that they decided to reach out. And they also liked him so much, and he was so interested, he just happened to take a little visit to Bloomington. And the reason that the Hoosiers are interested in this guy, Zach Anderson from Florida Gulf Coast, he only shoots 46% from 3. Yeah, let me say that one more time. 46% from 3. That's absurd. Now, there is a little asterisk behind that, and we'll get to that. But he's a 6'7" wing from Florida Gulf Coast. Yes, 6'7", who can handle the basketball, but he really is a 3, in my opinion. And his three-point shooting is what has him as a very, very hot commodity in the transfer portal right now. 6'7" from Florida Gulf Coast, who again went 5 of 7 against us in Bloomington, all the way back in game 1. As a senior, he shot 46% from 3. Now, as I mentioned, there is a little bit of an asterisk. There's a little bit of a, okay, what's the catch type of thing. It was only on 1.5 made threes per game. All right, so he was shooting some. He wasn't shooting a ton, and he wasn't making a ton, but he was making them at a high percentage, right? He's only shooting about 3 per game, give or take, and making 1.5. I know that's not, you know what I'm saying. So he's not shooting a lot, but when he does, he makes it. I'm okay with that. That's fine. He is a pick your poison type of shooter where he's not going to shoot 10 of them a game. He might if he comes here. I don't know. We may instill that in him. We'll see. But that's okay, because if he's open and he shoots it, basically what that tells me is he's going to knock it down. And if you remember, look, I'll be honest, I had to go back and watch some of the film from all the way back in game 1, and I was reminded, oh, this guy can play. Not only can he shoot, he can handle the basketball, he can shoot mid-range, and he torched us all night long from behind the arc, mid-range, you name it, he did it. And he also shoots the free throw percentage pretty well, 69%. I'd like to see that be a little bit better, but that's fine. And then he shoots 50% from 2-point range as well. Averaged 13 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 turnovers for Florida Gulf Coast. So, look, I think he's a really good player, and he's not going to be a starter, obviously. But you talk about somebody that could come in and play behind Mackenzie and Ballo at the 3. I'm here for it. Absolutely. He's 6'7", can handle the ball, and can be a spot-up shooter for you, because that seems to still be the concern for this Indiana team from a lot of you, the fans, and I think from the coaching staff too, because while you've brought in 3 great players from the portal, I don't think your shooting has gotten any better, and that's scary. That's where this guy comes in, a 46, 47% three-point shooter who comes off the bench behind a 3-point shooter in Mackenzie and Ballo. So at this point, you always have one on the floor. That is key and crucial for this team. And I think it's crucial for how Mike Woodson runs his offense, because you have to have a shooter on the floor. And that was an issue last year when Mbako sat down. Who'd you go to? You didn't have anybody else. But you bring in this guy, Zach Anderson from Florida Gulf Coast. And yes, I know that his numbers are not a whole lot and his attempts are not a lot, which I think it does concern me. I'll admit that does concern me. But at this point, I kind of ask, why not? What's the risk here? He's not a starter. He's going to be a backup. You're going to sell him on that. He's probably going to buy that, because I heard really good things about his visit this weekend from both sides, from Indiana and from the Anderson camp. Why not? I mean, what's it going to hurt if you bring in this guy who's a shooter? He can make some plays when you need to, and he's just going to give you valuable minutes. Could he be a double-digit minutes type of guy? Maybe towards conference play and as we get into conference play next season, but he would be a good depth piece. He's got the size, he's got athleticism, and most importantly, in a small sample size, shooting-wise, he's got the shot. He's got everything you're looking for in terms of a depth piece, in terms of filling the shooting role. I don't think he's the only one, but he's the hottest one right now on the board. Just took a visit to Indiana. Good things from both sides. Keep an eye out for Zach Anderson, the Florida Gulf Coast transfer, who, yes, shoots 46% from three. You could see something come out of this very, very soon. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Look, I appreciate you being here. It's the start of a new week. Let's have a good one, okay? Last week was fantastic. Thank you all so much for the support. Be sure you're here every single day. YouTube, audio, you name it. You know how to find it. Whoever, however, doesn't matter. I appreciate you. Like the video. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Be sure you're following and keeping up with us on all of our social medias at Locked On Hoosiers, plus on any of the audio platforms that you may be listening to. We'll be back tomorrow, Hoosier fans, and as I keep saying, you just never know what's going to happen. It's portal season, and when you're the portal champs, you just keep going. Until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.